I sat there thinking about the events of the last few weeks. Try as I might, I couldn't pinpoint anything specific that made me think Emma was cheating on me. It was the little things that made me uneasy. Something was happening, but I couldn't understand what. I was sure something was up, but I had no proof. I had no idea who, what, or where it was happening. I even began to doubt my own sanity. Was I reading too much into it? Maybe I was overreacting, imagining all sorts of scenarios. But still, my insides were knotted. I felt, rather than knew, that something was happening. Maybe this was the beginning of an affair, maybe just a one-time thing. The more I tormented myself with thoughts and fantasies, the more confident I became. I had been thinking like this for what seemed like weeks, but how long did it go on before I became even slightly aware that something was wrong? I took another sip of my whiskey. The ice clinked in the glass, telling me it was time to pour more. I caught the bartender's eye, and he nodded. He slid along the counter and replaced my glass with another double whiskey on ice. He smiled slightly at me, as if reading my thoughts. He had seen that look many times before. His gaze was supportive and at the same time compassionate as he recognized the pained look in my eyes. The drink's sweet taste warmed my mouth and throat as I took another sip. I should calm down, I decided, looking around the bar and noticing a handful of other people drinking. It was quiet. The low hum of chatter simply filled the room with unintelligible words and added background to my growing sense of unhappiness. There was no joy here. The faces of the customers who filled the bar were expressionless. No one stood out. Everyone was plain and average in every way. The only woman in the place, who looked to be in her 40s, a little overdressed for the time of day and place, and who looked perhaps a little desperate, was being treated to drinks by an older guy. He looked like he was hoping for luck, and looking at her, he didn't have to try so hard. I thought she already had his number. The other souls seemed to be simply passing the time, while the rain fell outside and further dampened the mood. Soon, each of them would run out of reasons to stay in the sanctity of the bar and head home. I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. So, what's the story? I turned in the direction of the voice. She looked at me, and her eyes penetrated deep into my soul. I thought I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. She stood in the dimly lit bar, dripping with water as she began to take off her coat. "What are you doing here, Liz? I was worried about you, and I had an idea that I would find you here, so here I am. Do you want to talk?" I looked at her, and my mind tried to regain some balance as I stared. "Are you worried about me? Why? What do you mean?" I looked at her, trying to understand what she was thinking, worrying if she was trying to trick me somehow. Can I trust her? I took a sip from my whiskey and ordered her a vodka and soda, which the bartender served with some style, smiling at the sight of Liz. She caught his eye as he served her, smiling one of his sweet butterwamp smiles as his gaze slid over her full chest jutting out beneath her tight blouse. Liz waited until the bartender walked away before saying anything else. Her eyes were wary as we looked at each other, uncertainty fighting for position and advantage. "Well, it all has to do with how you've been acting lately. You look like you have the world's worries on your shoulders. Don't you just want to tell me what the hell is going on?" I looked into her brown eyes for a moment before looking away. She always knew how to read me like an open book. That was what I always liked about her. We got along. We also seemed to somehow understand each other. We had arguments, but we never fought about anything. We've always been direct and honest with each other. Well, up to a point. What was left unsaid was simply understood. "Liz, I'm fine, and we're fine. You don't really have anything to worry about." I looked at her as she took in my words. I could see she didn't buy it. My heart sank, and I tried to brush it off, but I could see it wouldn't go away. Liz took a slow sip from her glass and looked straight into my soul again. "Oh my God, this is it," I thought. She placed the glass on the table in front of her, then clasped her fingers together and leaned forward slightly towards me. I know what's going on. I don't understand what you mean." I tried to bluff. "For God's sake, Aaron, I know, so let's be honest with each other and stop fooling around." The bartender caught the last few words, and his head turned just enough to try to catch more of what he assumed must have been something juicy. "Let's sit in one of the booths. It's too public here in my opinion." I saw the disappointed look on the bartender's face as we stood up and walked across the bar to one of the side booths. We sat opposite each other like prize fighters waiting for the other to strike. Okay, so what do you think you know? I fought in the tournament. Nice try, Aaron. You know you can't lie to me. We've known each other too long, and I do know. So, tell me about it. You know you need to talk to someone, so put it out there. I've known Liz since I was 17. She was always there, and had a bit of a crush on me for a time when I started dating her sister, Sarah. Sarah was 3 years older, and we started dating when we were both 20. Liz and I always got along, much to the displeasure of her older sister. They were as different as chalk and cheese in many ways, but their personalities were common, as evidenced by the many quarrels between the sisters over the years. 2 years later, we were married and had what I thought was an idyllic future. We both worked decent jobs and earned enough to at least make life comfortable. My sister-in-law, Liz, had fun in her late teens and early 20s and now, at age 25, was looking for something more grown-up. I felt like she had sown all her wild oats and turned into someone that I thought any guy would be lucky to get close to. Sarah and I have been married for 5 years. Well, we'll be 5 in a month when our anniversary arrives. That's if we go that far, I thought. Liz is a very attractive woman and someone I considered a friend as well as my sister-in-law. I looked at her, and my eyes began to fill with tears as I searched for words to explain how I felt. But still, her words I know rang loud and clear in my head. She reached across the table, and her fingers stroked mine before squeezing them tightly, a sign of support and even more as I felt my heart slowly breaking. Okay, Aaron, if you don't tell me, then I will. Sarah is cheating on you. I think you know this. Of course, I know. What are you going to do about it? Now my eyes widened when I heard those words, but still refused to understand as I stubbornly tried to make sense of what I knew and what it meant. I didn't want to hear anything anymore. In my opinion, if I didn't really know, then it couldn't have happened, and then it couldn't have hurt me. I wouldn't have to deal with it either. Liz looked at me. She saw the glassy look I gave her. Was it shock or denial? Aaron, I love you dearly, but for God's sake, wake up. I'm sure it's some kind of misunderstanding or something. I tried to slip it under my arm, and also tried to mislead myself even more. Liz's eyes suddenly flashed with rage. She reached out and hit me in the face, damn hard. The bartender looked at me and stopped wiping the glass he was holding in his hand. Is everything all right there? I raised my hand. Yes, of course. There are no problems here. I raised my hand to my cheek. The heat of the slap made it glow, and I was sure Liz's perfect handprint was there too. Sorry, Aaron, but you drive me crazy sometimes. You know how much I care about you, and I can't stand to see you hurt like this. So be wise and courageous. This is happening, and we need to do something about it. I swallowed, rubbing my cheek, and the gravity of my situation began to dawn on me as the pain of her slap shot through my brain. Okay, I'll start. I'm sure you at least suspect something, but I'll continue anyway. A few weeks ago, I was with Sarah when she got a call on her cell phone. She left the room to answer, which was a strange thing to do, wasn't it? We're sisters, damn it. What could she be hiding from me? I nodded, fearing the worst, but as I sipped my whiskey, she continued. I just thought it was weird. So when I had the chance, I checked her phone. Sarah is so trusting. There is no lock code on it. The call was from a guy who was in her contacts and introduced himself as Rick. I didn't know about any Rick or Richard, but thought I'd keep an eye out for any recurrence. So who was this guy Rick or Richard? I asked, trying to rack my brain for any information about this name. I actually found out who he was about a week later. This is a guy she knew years ago, before she even started dating you. Anyway, it looks like he contacted her through one of those social networks, or a chat site or something like that. It looks like they've been messaging each other for a few weeks now too, but I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was that there seemed to be little things going on that somehow stayed apart. Yes, I know, but it was all part of what they did. Nothing obvious, but it just seemed like everything was falling into place for them. So it's just a couple of friends texting each other, reliving old times or something? Yes, it seems. Anyway, that's how it all started. Are you saying that something happened? Yes. Are you saying that you didn't notice anything suspicious? Only that it seemed like circumstances were conspiring to keep us apart, and of course, the obvious lack of opportunity to have fun. Liz looked at me with a look of disbelief on her face, as if I was stupid. What? I stared back at her. Erin, I love you dearly, but damn it, get your head out of your ass. Reality sank deeper into my fogged brain as her words became more real by the minute. Damn, I thought this was serious. I took another sip and gathered my courage. How far do you think it went? Or do you know? Liz looked at me. Her eyes sparkled and looked away for a split second. That was all the answer I needed. When? How? Where? I asked quickly. My mind was now playing catch-up as I felt rage begin to boil inside me. The race between logic, common sense, and pure animal rage had begun. I know she's met him at least 3 times in the last 2 weeks. At first, I was not sure, and only 2 days ago, I found out for sure that it had progressed. I was having lunch with one of my friends who works with Sarah, and she let it slip. I didn't show it at the time, and she hid it well, so I let it slide. It turns out she met him twice for lunch, and at least once for dinner one evening last week. Is this consistent with what you noticed? I looked at her, taking in her words. There have been a couple of times recently where I called her office to set up a lunch meeting, and she wasn't there or she just left. Was this when she met him? Then last week, she had a seminar that she simply had to attend. It was announced late and scheduled for after work. That evening, she returned home late, after midnight, reminiscing about the past. She came in and said it had taken a long time, and the team went for a drink at the hotel bar to relax before leaving. I also remember that there was no fun time that night, and she also took a shower before bed. My mind was racing. My brain was confused as I perceived these hurtful facts, each of which increased the agony and turned the knife that was firmly stuck in my heart. To hell with all this, I suddenly spat. Liz looked at me, and now there was concern in her eyes. Erin, what are you going to do? Don't do anything stupid. She shouldn't get you into trouble with the law. I looked at her, and from the expression on her face, I knew that she had noticed the change. My face seemed like stone, and my heart was now a block of granite. My body was preparing for what was to come, and she could see it. To hell with all this. I will not put up with this under any circumstances. This will stop. They'll stop this. There is no place in my life for a cheater. She will pay. He will pay too. My eyes glazed over as rage bubbled up inside me. My muscles tensed, and my fists clenched. I've never been a violent guy. I had my share of confrontations when I was younger, but I never looked for trouble. Sometimes you just have to take a step forward and face the truth, which is what I did then. I was just a little out of practice, that's all, but it had to be fixed and quickly. Erin, whatever you're up to, take a step back. Think about it, and don't rush without a plan. Otherwise, everything will go to hell. You need to think and prepare, otherwise you will end up getting burned. Her words saturated my rage, seeped into the rational part of my brain, and made sense. In a weird way, it helped me calm down a little and realize that what I suspected was actually true. So at least I wasn't going crazy. Do you think she's there now? I looked at Liz. I saw that her eyes filled with tears, and a tear began its lonely path down her pretty face. Yes, I know that she is with him now. That's why I came looking for you. I felt rage boiling inside me again and slammed my fist on the table. Several people in the bar turned and looked. I raised my hand to the bartender, and he gave me that half-smile again. How the hell did he know? Do you know where exactly? I asked more hopefully than anything else. No, I have no idea, but tomorrow we'll see my friend again and find out what I can. I know he's married and has a couple of kids, although I'm not sure where he lives yet, but I'll do my best to find out if it helps. I reached for her hand, holding it tightly, and brushed a tear from her cheek. Thank you, Liz. I know it's hard for you, but I really appreciate it. I really do. What are you going to do? She looked at me worriedly. I know I can't do what I want, at least not yet, but I'll stop it. When I do this, it will be final, and there will be no retribution, no remorse. But they will both pay. In the meantime, I will keep what is mine. I will get the evidence I need for what I decide to do next. Liz looked at me worriedly as I finished my whiskey. I caught the bartender's eye, and he poured another one for each of us. As he approached, I saw that Liz wanted to say something. I raised my hand to stop her until the drinks arrived. I handed him a banknote. Keep the change for yourself. He nodded and left. So how long will it be before you come face to face with her? I have a lot to think about. I'll make a couple of calls tomorrow while I do what I need to do with my assets. She won't get a penny from me if I can catch her. Not a single penny. You know it will be difficult for you to be around her, don't you? Yes, I understand that, but in any case, in a sense, this has been the case for the last few weeks. I'm guessing that if she hasn't noticed it now, she won't see any change. Liz finished her drink in one gulp and stood up. I have to go, Aaron. Can we talk again tomorrow? I'll find out everything I can for you. She put her coat back on. I stood up and helped her, feeling her press against me. Crap, she looked so much like her sister. She looked up at me, and I saw tears in her eyes as I kissed her cheek. Go home. It'll be okay. I'll call you tomorrow. She smiled and turned away, and I watched her walk out the door into the dark and damp evening. I took a deep breath and sat down, wondering what to do now. One thing was certain. They will pay, and it will be fast, ruthless, and unforgiving. I don't remember much after that. Somehow, I woke up in my own bed with a mouth like the bottom of a parrot's cage. My head was still spinning when I lifted myself from the bed. I rolled over and noticed that I was alone, and Sarah was nowhere to be seen. My senses were slowly awakening when I heard a noise downstairs. I swung my legs off the bed and tried to get up. Oh my God, what did I do to myself last night? I thought. I staggered to the bathroom and began to recover from the effects of my whiskey cloud. I went downstairs in a haze of pain, and my joints ached. Everything seemed to hurt. Looking into the kitchen, I saw her. Hello, my love. What did you do last night to get into this state? Would you like to know? I had a drink with an old friend, that's all. Got carried away. I sat down, poured myself some orange juice, swallowed it, and went for another. Oh, really? Who was that? Anyone I know? My mind turned on. No, I don't think so. It was Tom. I knew him a long time ago. Haven't seen him in years, and he was in town for a couple of days on business. Tom? Something flashed across her face when she turned around. Yeah, I'm sure you probably remember me mentioning that we went to college together and played football for a couple of years. Tall guy, dark hair. He still asked about you. Sarah looked puzzled. Sorry, I don't remember any Tom, but still, the main thing is that you had fun. Strike first. She sat opposite me at the table. I looked at her, remembering my conversation with Liz yesterday. So, honey, what did you do last night? Was there anything exciting? What time did you arrive? She looked me in the eye as she lied to me. Oh, nothing special really. I finished my work, and then the two of us went out for something to eat and drink. I was home by 9:30. I started to worry about you, but then I remembered that you had a late meeting. I knew she wasn't home by then because I was still home at 10 p.m. That's when I got enough and went to the bar. Second strike. I have some things I need to do this morning, so we'll take a shower and hit the road. I may be late tonight, so don't wait. Tom said he'll be in touch. We still have some catching up to do. You'll have to invite him over if he stays here for a few days. It's nice to meet old friends. I'm sure I will do it. You must remember him fondly. She looked at me blankly. Her face tried not to react in any way and not give anything away, but she felt something. I saw it. Maybe it will come back to me later, love. Now move, otherwise you will be late. Do you want me to drive? You actually drank a little too much last night. No, everything is okay. I still need to get a taxi and pick up my car, as I remember leaving it at the bar, so thanks anyway. I want to get dressed. After drinking more orange juice and a couple of painkillers, I left the house 30 minutes later while Sarah was getting ready. I had a busy day ahead of me. I was sure of one thing. This would not last long. I gritted my teeth when I thought about Sarah with this Rick character. My fists clenched. He was going to pay, and I was going to crush the bastard. The work was chaotic. I had call after call to sort out problems on the line. My secretary hosted some, but there were meetings I needed to attend, so I couldn't avoid any of them. By mid-morning, the initial rush had subsided, and I had some almost free time to sort out my personal problems. I closed my office door and started checking my finances. Within 15 minutes, I had tightened the strings of my wallet and moved some cash out of reach. I also made an appointment with a lawyer to discuss a possible divorce. I still had a few days left before that, so I thought this would give me time to get more information. Not that it would matter that much anyway, but it might give me some leverage. Sarah had her own bank account and credit card, so nothing needed to be done there. The problem was access to our joint account, but I quickly closed that loophole so that if it came down to it, she wouldn't be able to get more than what was left. My own account was secured and only had a small balance in it. The rest was withdrawn and safe. We didn't have children, so it would have essentially been a straight break if it had come down to it. I decided to myself that the only way we could get past this was if Sarah confessed her sins, so to speak, and asked for forgiveness. Show any restraint, and everything will be over between us. This thought made me sad. I sat silently at my desk, thinking about what happened and the actions I took today. Did I need more information about Rick's character and the evidence, or would the fact that I knew about it be enough to really get them both? The phone rang, disturbing my thoughts. Yes, it's me, Liz. How are you, Aaron? Oh, I'm busy with things, thoughts, plans, all this and much more. Mostly, I don't understand why, but I started to make progress. I learned more about this guy from my friend. His name is Rick Roberts, and he is married. I also have his address and where he works. I was able to get this without reporting what was happening. My friend knows Sarah and recently saw her with him. From what she says, they are getting really hot with each other. No matter how hard they try to hide it, the signs are there, she says. Has she seen them together? I asked. Yes, they were at the Radisson the other evening after the seminar. They stayed after everyone else had left. She said they were comfortable with each other. Well, at least this is a start. I'm sure there are CCTV cameras there if needed. Anyway, give me his details. I need to figure this out. It's eating me up inside, and I don't know how long I can hold it in. Liz handed over her details, and within minutes, I found his social media page and received his photo. It was then that I thought I remembered his face. It was familiar, but where and when had I seen this face before? I looked at my watch. It was almost lunchtime, and I decided to call Sarah to maybe meet up or just to stir the pot a little. My heart went cold when I called. The knot in my stomach felt like it was about to burst when I heard her answer. Hi, darling, she cooed, recognizing my number. Hey, baby, what are you doing for lunch? I was wondering if we could meet if you're free. Oh, sorry, dear. I have an appointment in 30 minutes that will last until the end of the day. I was going to grab something quick at the grocery store next door. Everything is fine. What is this meeting about? Anything exciting? Same old routine with a new client, that's all. I think it's Mr. Roberts. Her words pierced me like a knife. She almost shoved it in my face, telling me who it was. I held my breath for a few seconds, trying to control myself. Sweetheart, are you there? Her voice sounded in the earphone. Yes, I'm here. Strike 3. You and Mr. Roberts will get yours very soon. No reprieve and no mercy. Complete scorched earth. Yes, darling, I'm here. Sorry, I got distracted by something. I was just thinking about, look, I have to go, and I know you have to get ready for your meeting too. So have fun, and I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Love you. Bye. I hung up. I was seething with anger and sat gritting my teeth when my secretary poked her head through the door. Aaron, I'm going to that grocery store down the street. Do you want me to buy you something? I thought for a moment. Yes, buy me anything. Surprise me. The main thing is that it is large, filling, and with a lot of red meat inside. I feel like I want to sink my teeth into something. She looked at me strangely and nodded as she closed the door. It seemed to her that her boss was acting a little strange. He had been locked up all morning. Businesslike, yes, but there was something else. Something was brewing. She just knew it. Liz called her sister's office and walked into the lobby to see her sister exit the elevator and walk toward the front door next to a tall, dark-haired man. He looked to be about 35, a couple of years older. She recognized him after seeing his photo on the internet. Rick Roberts. She stood in front of her sister, who jumped in surprise when she saw her. Liz, what are you doing here? Liz looked at her sister, seeing her discomfort at having her obvious plans ruined. I just thought I'd pop over to see my sister and maybe go have lunch. She smiled innocently. Well, Mr. Roberts and I are having a business lunch, so maybe another time. He extended his hand to her. Rick Roberts. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Mr. Roberts. How long have you known Sarah? He looked a little confused by her question. Sarah started to pull her away. Listen, Liz, we need to go. We have a meeting. See you soon. Liz smiled as she watched the couple walk out the door and into a waiting taxi. She noticed her sister looking back at her as it drove away. I sat in my office, chewing a huge piece of pie. It was stuffed with red meat, and I smiled to myself as I slowly bit into it, savoring it and thinking about my next steps. Liz confirmed that Sarah had left her office, so I called her secretary and found out that she would be gone all day. Well, isn't this damn great? As far as my finances are concerned, everything was settled. I had a locksmith on speed dial and agreed ahead of time on what was required. My lawyer was on edge and ready to act as soon as I gave him the rest of the information he requested. Okay, tonight was supposed to be the first step. I was going to really mess around with this couple for a while before I pulled the trigger. My old man always told me, don't let them know that you are following them. Just take route number 1. Be straightforward and destroy the bastards. To hell, a person who has few, to say the least, direct words. Maybe it was something I had forgotten about recently, but it was getting damn close. It was on its way. That evening, I was at home when Sarah walked through the door. She looked beautiful, nothing unusual. She smelled normal too until I went up to kiss her. It was the unmistakable smell of men's cologne, faint but still noticeable. She noticed that I was looking at her. I didn't say anything, kissed her lightly on the cheek, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Are you okay? I am fine. I have a problem that I need to deal with, that's all. Just going to see Joe. He invited me to play poker with a couple of guys from work. I thought it would do me good. It won't be too late. With that, I closed the door behind me and, gritting my teeth, got into my car and slid down the driveway. I drove to Joe's, pulled up in front of his house, and he pulled me through the door into his garage. Joe and I have a long-standing relationship. He always sailed with the wind and had gotten into trouble with the police in the past, but given his special combat training, he was the perfect friend for what I had in mind. You don't mess with a cage fighter. Joe was a big guy, a little over 6 feet tall, and weighing about 198 pounds, all muscle. Not the kind of guy to mess with, trust me. With a personality to match his size, he was formidable, but we had been firm friends since school. I called Joe earlier, and he offered to help in any way, no questions asked, no matter what I needed. This kind of support. We quickly slipped into the garage, and I changed into dark overalls and a matching ski mask. We were like 2 mime performers standing and looking at each other. Not a word was spoken as we climbed into the nondescript used car he had procured. There was nothing remarkable about her. We walked slowly across town to the address Liz had given me. We still didn't say a word. We agreed on the format in advance, so there was no need to say anything more. Joe stopped the car near Rick Roberts' house. There were no signs of life there. The only light we could see was on. We waited in silence. When the front door opened, we saw him get out, get into his car, and drive down the road. Joe followed at a safe distance, and we already knew where he was going, so there was no rush or panic. There were no problems with parking at the training field. We stayed in the car while Rick went to get his usual 50-ball bucket. Apparently, he did this every week. It's amazing what you can learn on the internet if you know where to look. We made ourselves comfortable. The radio was on, and Kenny Rogers was humming softly. Joe looked at me as words poured out of the radio. He reached out and turned it off. We sat watching and waiting. The tension inside me was almost unbearable. It was hard to stay still and not go out and beat around the bush, but it was risky. The parking lot began to empty until there were only a couple of other cars left. We both tensed up when we saw him heading toward his car. Joe got out of the car and stealthily walked toward the target. Rick was still getting over the last shot of his practice when he lifted the lid of his trunk and put his clubs inside. Joe picked him up and stuffed him into the trunk along with the clubs. One well-aimed blow to the jaw was enough to silence him. Cage fighter Joe gained the upper hand, and for the next 30 seconds, Rick was in severe pain in the trunk of his own car. Satisfied that he had used the human punching bag enough, Joe turned his attention to Rick's groin, and soon several blows from Joe's fist caused him to yelp before he passed out. He slammed the lid and quickly returned to the car, where I quietly, without fuss, drove us out of the parking lot. Everything went very well, Joe thought, taking off his gloves and mask. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. Don't worry, buddy. Anytime. I am still your debtor, and I will never be able to repay you for what you have done for me. Well, That's what friends are for. At least your hands weren't broken, and there were no CCTV cameras in the parking lot, so it was a good job, as they say. Let's go back and start this card game. The rest will already be there. We drove back and played poker for the next 4 hours just for fun, without high stakes. We were friends, and friends don't steal from each other. The atmosphere was good. All the guys knew what was going on and supported me the whole way. This alone made me feel good about what I knew I would also have to do to Sarah very soon. But first, I was going to mess with her head. I stumbled through the door just after 1 a.m. I exaggerated the amount I drank, and Joe asked one of the guys to deliver my car. Sarah stayed awake and waited. I thought it was time for an Oscar-winning performance. Darling, why are you not sleeping? I told you I'd be a little late. Are you okay? She looked at me intently. Joe and the guys just dropped me off in my car, scared that I hit Jack Daniels a little hard again. I threw my jacket onto the coat rack and missed miserably. I plopped down on the sofa and looked at her. Sarah sat with her arms crossed over her chest, a look of disgust on her face. I stared at her with bulging eyes and a blank expression on my face. What? She just snorted. She was bursting with the desire to say something. Come on, post it. What's going on, Aaron? Is there someone else or something else? You've been acting really strange lately. I laughed. I felt anger boiling inside me, but I swallowed it back. All in good time, Aaron. Take your cold pill. I'm fine, my petal. I've been having a hard time lately, that's all. It will all be over soon. Sarah looked at me. My words were replaying in her head. I had seen that she wasn't sure, but there was definitely something there. We went to bed. I pretended to pass out and apparently fell asleep almost immediately. This made her angry, and she was ready to do anything, but I didn't play. The next morning, Sarah was up first and made coffee. I came crashing down the stairs, acting disgustingly like I had a hangover. I ran into the kitchen. Good morning, my love. How are you? My God, I have a good head on my shoulders again. Is there anything I can take for this? She threw some headache medicine at me while I sipped my coffee. She seemed calm. I saw her phone on the kitchen table and wondered if someone had called her. Sarah saw me looking at her phone, and I could tell she wanted to reach for it, but that would have seemed weird. I poured some more orange juice and, casually picking up the phone, saw a look of panic flash across her face. So, she somehow got the message. I just glanced at it quickly before pushing it towards her. Needs recharging, my love. I don't want any messages not to be received due to a low battery. I left the kitchen and went to get dressed. Sarah looked out for me as if she knew something was going on, and Rick didn't text her this morning like he had been doing for the last couple of weeks. He couldn't know, could he? She dismissed the thought. She couldn't have been so careless, and it only lasted a few weeks. There were several lunches, dinner, 3 times, and of course a hotel, which was also 3 times. In fact, she thought it was nothing special, just harmless fun, and Aaron would never find out. He wasn't going to leave without her, was he? This suddenly made her think. When was the last time she had fun with her husband? Oh my God, she couldn't remember. Maybe that's how it was. She needed to do something about it, and quickly. She was so engrossed in Rick that she missed what was in front of her, the only sure thing that could make Aaron suspicious. I tumbled down the stairs and almost flew out the door when Sarah tried in vain to grab me for a deeper kiss than usual. I waved and smiled at her as I pulled out of the driveway and headed to work. Around 11 a.m., I thought I'd text Sarah just for fun. Sorry about today, my love. I have a lot of thoughts, but everything will be resolved soon. Love you, X. I sat back in my chair, waiting for something to happen. Just after lunch, Liz called me. Aaron, what the hell happened? What are you asking, Liz? Rick Roberts was found beaten in the trunk of his car by a golf club employee earlier today. Sarah told me about this. She is shocked by this. She's really shocked. I told her that these things happen sometimes these days, and it's terrible when it's someone we know, but we shouldn't make too much of it. You did it, didn't you? Oh my God. Was he badly hurt? In any case, I can't say that it's too expensive for me, but no, I didn't lay a finger on him. Well, he's just a little beat up. I heard there were a few cuts and bruises, but nothing seemed broken. Did you ask how she found out? Yes, she said that she had an appointment with him for today, And his company called saying that he was in the hospital. His wife called them. This is very sweet, also believable, but cute. Maybe next time it won't be so easy for all of them. What do you mean, Aaron? Accidents happen in the strangest places. That night when I returned home, Sarah was not at home. Her car was gone, and there was no message. I called her phone. Where are you, my love? I asked cheerfully. Oh, I'm in the hospital visiting a friend. I'll be back soon. I'm on my way right now. Okay. I hope she's getting better. Anyway, see you soon. Love you. Bye. I turned off the phone before she could answer. 30 minutes later, she returned home. Her face looked gray and haggard. How's your friend doing? I hope it's not too serious and she gets out of there soon. Sarah looked at me as if she wanted to say something but changed her mind. Oh yeah, there's nothing too dramatic about it. She just fell and got some nasty bruises. We'll be home in a few days. This is good coffee. Yes, thank you. Sarah looked at me as she sipped her coffee. The other night, one of the representatives of my company was attacked. She left the statement hanging, waiting for a reaction. Oh God. Really? What happened? He was beaten and left overnight in his car. Oh God. This is terrible. I hope the police catch whoever did this. Is he okay? Yes, fortunately, Rick wasn't hurt too badly. It just seems like they wanted to beat him up for no reason. Nothing was stolen. Strike 4. This is the same Rick you said you didn't know? She saw me looking at her and realized she had made a mistake. She hid it, but she knew it was too late now. She also knew that I knew too. She hurriedly headed toward the exit to change clothes. I suspected she might answer the phone any second. But who? I decided I needed to rethink my plan since things were moving faster now. I needed to get things moving a little. I called out to Sarah, who was coming up the stairs, and told her that I needed to go out for a while so she wouldn't worry and that I wouldn't be long. I drove to Rick Roberts' home address and knocked on the door. The door opened, and a petite, dark-haired woman stood in front of me. Mrs. Roberts, you don't know me, but I have to tell you something that is quite delicate in nature. Can I come in for a minute? She looked at me nervously, but at the same time intrigued and wary. My name is Aaron Knight. My wife's name is Sarah Knight, and she has been having an affair with your husband. I stopped there when an expression appeared on her face that was both awareness and horror. She moved away from the door and led me inside to the living room. I take it this has something to do with both of them? I could already see the pain growing in her eyes. Yes, I'm afraid that is so. They were having an affair, and I found out about it a few days ago. I'm sorry to have to tell you about this. I also know that he is currently in the hospital. She seemed to shrink internally, and her head dropped to her chest as tears flowed easily for several seconds. I knew it. I knew he was at it again, she spat. I'm going to divorce Sarah. She's had enough chances to confess everything, and I can't stand her lies anymore. I'm not too sure how long this went on, but it's enough for me that she betrayed me and that I can't forgive or forget. Does this have anything to do with the beating he suffered last night? I looked into her pleading eyes and quickly decided on my actions. I don't know about that. I didn't even lay a finger on him. For me, it happened so quickly that I myself am still in shock. Whoever did this is fine with me. Sorry, but that's exactly how I feel. Could he also be flirting with someone else's wife? Nothing surprises me. Well, he can keep his sorry ass on the other side of my front door. I've had enough of this. That's why we came back here. He cheated. I left her still spitting fire after I gave her the number of my locksmith and my lawyer too. Honey, oh my God, what a mess. I jumped into my car and headed to the hospital, which was only 10 minutes away. I got there faster. I walked through the lobby, almost smiling as if a layer of stress had begun to lift off me. I squeezed into the elevator and went up to the room on the 4th floor where a certain Mr. Rick Roberts was. I checked the patient list and found him in a side room. I slipped past the nurse's station unnoticed, entered his room, and carefully closed the door behind me. When I entered, he looked at me questioningly. I walked over to his bed, looking at his bandaged face. One eye was closed, the other bloodshot, and he looked at me, trying to focus. Joe did a really good job, I thought as I looked him over. You look like you don't recognize me, Rick. Think a little. I'll give you time. I smiled at him when he looked at me comically. I sat on the edge of his bed as he looked at me through the bandages on his face. I could only see one very black and swollen eye, And it looked like he had problems with his jaw too. Doesn't matter. I looked at the raised bedding supporting the weight of his lower body. Oh my God, this looks disgusting. It hurts, doesn't it? When I took the emergency button from him, throwing it under the bed, I poked him in the ribs, and he squealed like a little pig. So, you still thought about who I could be, Rick? Do you want a hint? Still the same confused look on half of his face in bed. Let me think. Oh yes, this might help. How about you think about all the married women you've had fun with and how many marriages you've ruined? Is this a good enough starting point? His eyes looked at me, and I could tell his mind was buzzing as he tried to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Another minute passed as I waited, wanting to savor his pain and confusion. Another hint, little Ricky. Try this. I'm married to a woman named Sarah. Will it work? I saw the light bulb go off when he realized who I was. Like this, you understand everything, right? I smiled like a tiger before dinner. He nodded slowly. I'm glad we've got this sorted out. Now, I bet you're wondering why I'm here, aren't you? Yes, of course it is. Well, I came to deliver a message from your wife. I paused and waited for him to understand, and then I made a sound in my throat. It seemed like his throat was injured, so he couldn't speak very clearly at all. No matter. She told me to send you off. Do not come back. The divorce will be sent by mail. Oh, and by the way, screw you. I saw a tear flow from the only eye I could see. I started laughing. He couldn't move, and I laughed some more, watching him struggle. I leaned over him and looked into his one eye. I'm divorcing my wife because she had fun with a scumbag like you. And this is just the beginning for you, my friend. We will meet many more times. Of that, you can be sure. I will ruin your life like you ruined mine. They'll never stop, so start running. Oh, and by the way, I didn't do this to you. Just so you know. I wanted him to wonder who it was. I raised my fist as he watched and slammed it hard into his one open eye. I felt something crunch. No big deal. And then another quick blow to my balls. He screamed and then lost consciousness. I got up and left the room, satisfied. Not in the slightest, but it was a start. He could lie there knowing he screwed up and not being able to do anything about it. No one saw me leave, and if they had, they would have seen the big smile on my face. I drove home slowly to deal with the other half of my problem. My inner anger was under control because once the retaliation began, it was simply a course of action that would run its course, which I will follow and enjoy. For the most part, I was sad at the end of my marriage, but as much as I hurt at that moment, I knew there was never going back after her betrayal. My only consolation was that the parties who hurt me would feel it to a much greater extent. I do not forgive. There was a note on Rick Roberts' card that we would meet again. I parked my car in the driveway of the house. Sarah's car was parked where she had left it no more than 2 hours ago, and I absent-mindedly tapped the hood as I passed her on the way to my front door. I put my key in the lock and thought this might be the last time I do this as a married man. My heart suddenly felt like lead when I walked inside. It was as if all the worries of the last few days suddenly became real and incredibly heavy on my shoulders as I slowly walked toward the living room. As I approached the door, I heard the TV murmur in the corner of the room. I stood motionless, staring at her. Sarah sat perched on the sofa. Her behavior was filled with fear and trepidation, as if she was waiting for the axe to fall. She had a feeling that something was wrong, as if the game was over, but nothing had been said yet. She was trembling with excitement, trying to remain calm, and I stood and watched her. She raised her head, and I saw fear in her eyes. Her mouth tried to say something, but nothing came out. I walked into the room and then walked past her, getting myself a drink. I placed my glass with a large amount of Jack Daniels with ice on the coffee table between us and sat down. My eyes looked at her, absorbing her fear, and perhaps I sensed a bit of defiance too. I said nothing as I reached for my drink and took a slow sip. The drink warmed the back of my throat as it slid down, my eyes boring into her without blinking. She waited. Let this wait, I thought, taking another sip. Still silent. My face was expressionless as I watched the woman I loved so dearly stare back at me. My heart was still filled with deep feelings for her, but was now balanced by the pain she had caused me for no good reason. Now she would begin to feel my pain too. I stared at her, but she saw nothing in my face that would give her any reason for optimism. So much had already been said between us without any words at all. Sarah seemed to pull herself together and straighten up as she apparently decided to be bold. She had no idea what I knew and could no longer bear the accusing silence. "Where did you go?" Her eyes betrayed her concern while I sat motionless and silent. "Talk to me, damn it," she stammered. I took another slow sip of my Jack Daniels. I really love Jack after a busy day, I thought as I watched her get more and more stressed. "What's wrong with you, Erin?" she hissed, angry at my silent treatment of her. "Okay, Sarah, I'll tell you where I went if you also tell me where you were, okay?" She looked at me hesitantly and wearily as her mind began to race, like two prize fighters weighing each other, not sure who would make the first move, fearful of a counterpunch. "I told you I was in the hospital visiting a friend. What does all of this mean?" She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, pleased with her first throw. I took another slow sip of my Jack Daniels. "Honey, I just knew you would say this. Do you want to try again?" She watched my calm speech, and I saw fear flash in her eyes. Now she was scared. "I was with my friend, as I already said. What is wrong with you?" And again, she thought she had brushed off the question and turned it back to me. "Okay, Sarah, enough of this nonsense. I'll tell you where I went, okay? It will be easier for you to understand what we are getting at. I myself was visiting a friend. I didn't know her very long, but what I had to tell her was really very important. I haven't even met her before, but I can say that we are kind of friends now." I watched her face carefully. I could tell she was trying to control herself, but when she stuck her chin out, her defiant look gave her away. "Did I have an enlightening conversation with her about her husband, Rick Roberts? Perhaps you've heard of him." I saw the curtain begin to slide. "It looks like her husband had an accident and ended up in the hospital. Nothing serious, just some pretty nasty bruises, so he'll live. So that's good, right?" Sarah's face flushed as she felt the net closing in around her as I played with her. What did you want to talk to that Roberts woman about?" Sarah asked, knowing the answer but afraid to hear it from my lips. "It looks like her husband is a serial philanderer, skirtisser, traitor, or whatever you call it. Either way, I found out he cheated and felt she had a right to know." "Oh my God," she gasped, feeling something tighten around her throat like a noose. "Are you okay, honey? Can I get you something to drink? Do you know anything about Rick Roberts' affairs, my love?" I sipped my drink while she tried to find the words. Her mouth wouldn't listen, and nothing came out. "Let me help you here." I looked intently into her eyes, wanting her to see my deepest feelings. Now I know. Her eyes widened, and her hand went to her mouth as the realization hit her hard. I watched her face as she looked back at me, shock and disbelief, all this and much more, when she was looking for at least some support but saw nothing on my face. "I know about you and Ricky, baby. I knew this for a while, not long, but long enough. So if you have something to say, I suggest you do it now before you go." I emptied my glass and stood up to pour another. "Are you sure you don't want a drink?" I asked, much calmer than I actually felt given the circumstances. She nodded. I poured us both a large drink and sat back in the chair opposite her. Sarah took a long sip and then looked at me. "It didn't mean anything, you know? It was just fun." "It was just fun, of course. It didn't mean anything at all, did it? Are we forgetting the vows we both made?" I felt anger boil inside me when she mentioned the traitor cliché. "But it was just fun, Erin. It just happened." "Are you serious now? It never happens just like that. Usually, two people decide to have fun. They plan and agree to take off their clothes. They plan the place, the time. Don't treat me like a fool. You and Ricky have already cuckolded me for a few weeks or maybe months, but no more. Go to hell, both of you. It only happened twice, and that wasn't that great either. Yes, the thought of it was exciting, but it wasn't fun to do because I was constantly worried that you might find out. Well, I finally found out, so I hope it was worth our marriage. Erin, I'm sorry. Really sorry. It didn't mean anything, and we can get through this. I will make amends to you and do whatever you say." I heard myself laugh, also loud and maniacal, as she stared at me. She was struck by the thought that had just flashed through her head that this could be serious. "It was a mistake. We can fix this. I'm sorry." "Yes, sure you are, my love. I'm sorry you were caught. Would you have stopped if you hadn't been caught? I think not. All the old cliches fall so easily from the lips of a cheater, just like all the lies you've told me and others since this started. It becomes second nature to you. The only person who will swallow your lies here is yourself. Honestly, you are not the woman I fell in love with and married. I don't recognize you now. She looked at me as those words, in the depth of my heart, began to penetrate her deceptive facade. Crap, this was serious. What can I do, Aaron? Will I do anything? It's okay. We're done. While I was gone, I called Liz, by the way. She knows too. She'll be here in a few minutes to pick you up. But where will I go? Are you kicking me out? She looked at me, beginning to go into shock. You can go wherever you want, you damn cheater. Even back to the hospital to see your boyfriend. I don't care. The main thing is that you leave. We're done. I finished my drink and placed the glass on the table with a thump to emphasize the end of the conversation. Sarah sat looking at me, stunned, when there was a knock on the door. I stood up, walked over, and said hello to Liz. How did everything go? She asked as we entered the living room and looked at her sister, who was now sobbing non-stop, her shoulders shaking. Just get her out of here, Liz. Sorry to be blunt, but if she doesn't leave, I'm afraid of what it'll do to her. As much as I hate what she did, I still care about her. Please hurry up. Thank you for this, Liz, and I will get back to you soon. I poured myself another drink while Liz bustled around, packing Sarah's things for the next few days. I listened to my wife sob while watching her sister gather her things and stuff them into a couple of suitcases. It took less than 10 minutes to get her out of my house. A longer battle would be to cut her out of my life forever and erase the pain. Retribution will help with this. That was all I had to wait for now, plus another hardcore Jack Daniels. I looked at the flames of the funeral pyre I had built in the backyard. Everything that belonged to Sarah was now on fire. There was no way I would let that come back into my house. I finished the bottle and threw it into the fire. Thanks for watching today's story about Aaron discovering Sarah's affair and seeking his ruthless revenge. What would you do if you were in Aaron's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with more shocking tales of betrayal. Until next time, stay strong and stay vigilant. Thanks for watching this intense story of betrayal and revenge. What would you do if you discovered your partner was cheating? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more shocking stories. Stay tuned for the next one. The musty air of the waiting room did little to calm the churning in my stomach. I looked around briefly before my eyes fell back to the floor, questioning why I was even here. On my left was my beautiful wife, Diana, glowing as always, her beauty never failing to make my heart skip a beat. On my right was my daughter, Sophie, who had been my rock in so many ways. My mind wandered to the moments when I first met each of them. I had been a different man then. Mr. Davies' voice interrupted my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. "We'll be ready for you in about 30 minutes, he informed me. The other witness is on the stand now. I nodded, knowing this would be my first time in over a year coming face to face with my ex-wife, woman I had spent a decade with. But a lot had changed since then. Let me begin with the day my life was forever altered. It was just another autumn day in Westfield, Montana. I was returning home from my job at the Westfield Energy Corp. I hated the job and had pretty much been forced into it by Laura, my ex-wife. It is more secure and financially rewarding, she would say. It is better than construction, was usually the next comment. I should have known earlier that all she seemed to care about was money and social status. I do not want to say too much about Laura other than at 38, she was still the most beautiful girl in the world to me. She was smart, funny, and loved me to death. From the moment we met, I always thought she was out of my league. I was working construction back home in Ashwood when we met. I was tall and quite good-looking with a permanent tan from always being outdoors. From the moment we began dating, we were always together. I was her protector, her entertainer, and she saw past my lack of academia and only seemed to love me with more passion. When she finished her master's degree, we moved back to her hometown of Westfield and eventually married. Her parents were not thrilled by me at all, and they made no attempt to hide their dislike. Both she and her old friends felt she was too good for me and wondered why she would marry beneath herself. I was a good-looking dumbass, according to her father. Nonetheless, We were happy and loved each other more than anything. I was an only child and both of my parents had died in my late teens, so Laura became my whole world. I found a job in construction and Laura got a very good job at a finance company owned by a friend of her father's. When the recession hit in 2014, I lost my job, and it was Laura's salary that pulled us through the bad times. This only succeeded in making her parents love me more, if that was possible. It did put a strain on our marriage. Well, I guess it would when the people you love and socialize with tell you that your husband is a loser. Sadly, it also affected my friendships. Back home in Ashwood, I was now moving in different circles. According to them, of course, my best friend, Chris, was always there for me. He was more like my brother, and his folks helped me through the loss of my own parents. It was Laura who managed to convince me to take the job at the power company. Like I said, I hated it indoors. Computers, talking to people on the phone in a fake voice. It was my idea of hell. But I made the effort for Laura. At first, we both wanted to have children one day. But having a successful career and being seen to have one was more important to Laura. Image, wealth, and status really did not bother me. But I did everything Laura wanted, and I even tried to become the person Laura wanted me to be. Sadly, when you stop being yourself, things tend to go downhill, and you eventually become an unhappy person. I was no longer the chirpy Ashwood builder who loved to have fun and be around people. I became depressed most days. I put on weight, stopped grooming, and rarely socialized, if ever. Yes, I was an overweight office worker married to a successful financial analyst who attended fancy dinners and cocktail parties with the Westfield elite. I was not one of them. They knew it and I knew it. I pulled into our driveway and was surprised to see Laura's car in the garage. I got out of the car and walked over to the house with a feeling of impending dread. I did not know why, but as I entered the kitchen, Laura sat at the table looking solemn, yet assured. There were some papers in front of her, and as I was about to speak, she cut me off. "Jake, we need to talk." Those famous words hit me like a ton of bricks. I could see she was slightly nervous, but as I sat down, I saw no tears. "What is it, babe?" I asked. "Everything okay?" She steeled herself, cleared her throat as though preparing for a big speech. "I am sorry, Jake, but I want a divorce," she stated clearly and calmly. My heart sunk and my stomach knotted. I was speechless as it felt like someone had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart. That horrible feeling of sudden loss that I have experienced twice before is the worst feeling you can ever imagine. I looked at her and with a tremble in my voice, managed to speak. "But why?" I stuttered. "I have fallen in love with somebody else," she said, looking at me with no sign of pity. I was shattered, but strangely, I did not feel shocked. The old Jake would have caused havoc, but he no longer existed. Laura had seen to that. I was a shell of the man I used to be, and here she was, finishing me off with a final swipe of the sword. "How long?" I said huskily. "For months," she said as I just stared at her. "But now I want us to be together and get married," she declared with no thought for my feelings. I was looking at a woman I no longer recognized, and in reflection, she was looking at a man she no longer recognized. "I don't want to know the details, but I do want to know why," I said finally, afraid of what her answer may be. She wasted no time in answering. "Just look at yourself, Jake. You are not the man I married. You are overweight, unshaven for years, and when was the last time you had a decent haircut or purchased new clothes?" She said in a flurry of what must have been long pent-up feelings. "You're a shell of that man I fell in love with, and let's be honest, you have never been on my intellectual level, have you?" she said in a mocking tone. "God knows how many times in the last decade I have had to defend you to my parents, friends, and colleagues, justify to them why we married in the first place," she continued, and suddenly I wondered where the girl I fell in love with had disappeared to and who this heartless creature was sitting before me. "And David, my new man, is younger than you, fit, attractive, and has a successful business and a big house close to mommy and daddy in Maplewood." Every new word she spoke felt like a dagger piercing my body. "Do I know him?" I asked. "He runs the landscaping company that operates in the neighborhood. He is a sole trader at the moment, but we want to expand the business together," she added as I remained silent. She had finally finished and just sat there, anticipating another question, no doubt so she could crush me further. When I remained silent, she slid the papers towards me. Daddy and his attorney helped me to draft our divorce papers. I think it is a good deal for you, seeing as I paid the majority of the mortgage. Daddy recommended a 70-30 split in my favor for the house, which we can sell, as I will be moving in with David. I just let her continue. And, she continued, I think a 5,050 split of our savings is only fair, and I will require no alimony, although I am sure I could fight for something if I wanted to. The arrogance and spite in her voice were now clear to me. How did I miss it all these years? I felt like a fool, and I guess she thought I always was one. Come on, let's be honest, Jake. I make way more than you do, and my new man makes plenty too. So I won't touch your 381K if you sign the papers and don't fight me for anything. She suddenly stopped speaking as I looked her dead in the eye. She must have seen a glimmer of the old Jake because she swallowed hard. I grabbed a pen and signed away 10 years of marriage. I rose from the table and went to our bedroom, packed up my possessions, and then returned. She was sitting at the table reading through the paperwork as I walked past her, through the door, and out of her life. What? Chris screamed. Is she effing crazy? To me, Chris is family, and sadly, over the last few years, I have neglected him. But as true brothers, we can see past any transgressions and will always be there for each other in our time of need. As we spoke about what had happened, I could hear someone in the background and Chris trying to silence them. Is that Anna? I asked. What is she saying? She said good riddance to the stuck-up 304. Chris and Anna had what you call no filter. Chris and Anna had what you call no filter. What you see is what you get. And boy, did I miss that. It's how I used to be. Hey, Jake, I have a guy who Anna knows who does these investigations on debtors for local companies. I can get him to take a look into this guy for you. You know, see if the crap is legit and all? He asked in his usual brusque manner. I don't really care, Chris, I said despondently. This guy screws you over, steals your wife, and you just sit back and take it? Screw you, Jake, he said with his voice rising. That's when Anna must have realized it too. Sorry, bro. I am just as mad as hell and I wish you were too, he said apologetically. It's okay, Chris. I mean, you are right and all. Do what you like, I said. I gave him the very few details I had on this new guy. He was the landscaper for the neighborhood. So it wasn't too hard to get some more information if Anna's guy wanted it. You need to get your head back in the game, Jake, and return to your old self again, he instructed before we eventually hung up. After I put the phone down, I lay back on the cheap motel bed and stared at the ceiling fan whirring above my head. I tried to make sense of everything that had happened to my life, not only in the last few hours but the last 10 years. Sleep evaded me, so I made a grab for the bottle of Jack Daniels on the table and drank straight from the bottle. For the next few weeks, I did the same. Often I would call in sick at work or turn up drunk, the smell of booze leading me to be sent home. Everyone in the office was looking at me, snide comments made behind my back, and I felt like I was watching myself from above, just going through the motions of existence. I was recommended to a doctor, and although that helped, being signed off work gave me more time to think and dwell on the past. I never made it to the offices of Thompson Lewis to finalize the divorce. A letter was sent to my office because nobody knew where I was, and nobody was going to bother looking. I knew that for sure. The letter contained the divorce settlement and a check for $200,000, my share of the house savings and house contents. The settlement declared everything, Laura said at the kitchen table, and as I had not attended the meeting, it was finalized in absentia. I had no idea if all of this was legal and above board, but I had no fight left in me. Not enough, anyway, for Laura and her powerful inner circle. A month had now passed since Laura told me she wanted a divorce, and I had finally cashed the check into my account. I discovered all our other accounts had been closed, and Laura had removed her name from our joint account. However, as I was walking aimlessly out of the bank, I heard a voice calling my name. I ignored it at first, but when I eventually turned to look, I saw Ethan and Chloe, my old neighbors. Hey, Jake, Ethan asked, walking up to me. Sorry to hear about the divorce, he said nervously. Now Chloe, his wife, was a nosy neighbor and loved to gossip, and it did not take her long to pipe up. I can't believe Laura would leave you and remarry so quickly. I looked at her with surprise. I seemed to remember Laura saying she wanted to marry the guy, but such was my state of mind at the time. I forgot about it. Oh, you didn't know? Chloe continued. I had no idea, I said with an air of indifference. We thought you guys were the real deal, Ethan said. Then we see she is married to this David Stone. It was the first time I had heard his full name, but as I looked at Chloe, she seemed to recoil and cringe at the mere mention of his name. I ignored it as I suddenly thought I now had a surname to give to Chris Friend rather than David, the landscaper from Westfield. He was the landscaper who serviced your neighborhood, I said, offering information not asked for. As I did, I saw Ethan swing around and face Chloe, who by now had turned bright red. A landscaper? He yelled at Chloe, drawing stares from passers-by. Why have you gone red, Chloe? He asked as I realized I had put my foot right in it. No, Ethan. No, never, Chloe pleaded. He tried it on with me once and I put him in his place. Ethan was now red himself and looking pretty angry as Chloe continued. He is a sleaze and every time he is due, I go out for a few hours to avoid him. I never told you because I knew you would be angry, she said, reaching for his hand and pleading with him. We need to talk, he said before turning to me and apologizing. He grabbed her by the hand and marched her off down the sidewalk. I guess that is one lost customer for Laura and David's growing empire, I thought to myself, managing to raise a smile for the first time in a while. The news of the marriage did hit me hard. I slumped back into depression and reached for the bottle again. I thought I would have a good try at drinking myself to death. That way all the pain would go, and I wouldn't have to continue with my pointless existence. The next morning I rose from my motel bed and fell to the floor, vomiting all over myself. I had officially hit rock bottom. I crawled into the shower on my hands and knees and let the cold water rain down on me. As I emerged, I looked in the mirror, and what I saw reflecting back left me shocked. Screw you, I shouted at the man looking back at me. I need to get better. I fell to my knees and cried for the first time since my mother passed away. I just want to be happy, I screamed into my hands. I knew something had to change. I walked into my office the following Monday and got down to some work. For some reason, my personal mail was on my desk. I guessed it was redirected there because nobody knew where I was living. As I read through what was mainly junk, I found a flyer for a local gym promising to get anybody in shape in 10 weeks. I snorted to myself, thinking it would take longer than that, but I thought, what the hell? Maybe this was the change I needed. That evening, as I entered the gym, I had no idea what the beautiful young instructor standing before me would think of this soul has-been. At 41, I felt like an 80-year-old man. But as I stepped closer to her, she held out her dainty hand, which I gladly accepted. Emiva, she said. To say she thought I was a mess would have been an understatement, but within her beautiful brown eyes, I saw a semblance of hope for me. They seemed to inject some energy into me, not lust or anything romantic, but honesty and compassion. So over the next week, I managed to move out of the motel and sign a lease on a small studio apartment in the city close to the gym. I decided to focus on my 10-week plan and see where life took me. I needed to lose around 50 pounds, and the best place to start was getting rid of all the unopened alcohol bottles amongst my belongings. I worked really hard. Over the following month, my life was nothing but work in the gym. Chris and Anna also managed to visit a few times, no doubt to check up on me more than anything. But by the end of the month, and with constant encouragement from Eva, I had already lost 14 pounds. The good thing about spending nearly every day in the gym was that I got to know Eva a lot better. She agreed to coffee one evening after my session, and I found out a bit about her life. She was raised by a single mother and was attending a community college to become a full-time fitness coach and nutritionist. She certainly knew her stuff, and I warmed to her even more. I told her about my recent divorce and my old life in Ashwood. I admitted to her that I hit rock bottom before signing up at the gym and meeting her. I tried my best not to come off as some desperate creep, but she was beyond her years in terms of compassion and emotional maturity. It wasn't until a few sessions later that I emerged from the showers and met her. I was blown away. Eva was talking to a woman who at first sight looked like her sister, but I later found out was her mother, Rachel. I know, but it is the truth. Eva saw me looking and walked over to me before I could turn and walk away. Jake, this is my mom, Rachel, she said, smiling. As Rachel held out her hand, our eyes met, and I felt a tide of embarrassment flood over me. My stomach knotted, and I was truly lost for words. The silence was now getting awkward. "It means he likes you, Mom," Eva said, laughing and saving me in the process. "He's quiet when he likes someone," she added, as though she had known me my whole life. The truth is, I wasn't always a quiet, shy, and unassuming man. The years of what I now think to be emotional abuse will do that to you. Eva left us to collect her things as Rachel and I started to talk. When Eva returned, she invited me across the road for dinner. I hesitated at first, but her insistence made it hard to say no. I imagined that if she had a father, she would have him wrapped around her little finger. At dinner, Rachel was so warm and sweet, I could tell the apple did not fall far from the tree. As the evening progressed, I relaxed in their company. There was no need for a show or pretentiousness. Rachel joked around, putting me at ease. We briefly touched on our pasts, and I guess Eva filled her mother in on my life. Leaving that night, I felt better than I had in months. I even had Rachel's number in my phone after she insisted on sorting out the mess on top of my head. Reluctant at first, I capitulated, bringing the sweetest laugh from her. In the next couple of months, Rachel and I were inseparable. When we finally made love, the passion was intense and perfect every time. From then on, she was the only one in my mind, and finally, my heartbeat for another woman. We took it slow, wanting to ensure our feelings were real and build on trust. I took her back to my hometown, where Chris and Anna fell in love with her immediately. In the kitchen, Anna pulled me aside and said, "Now this is the woman for you, Jake. Do not let her go." I assured her there was no chance of that. Eva confirmed I was back to my ideal weight. I was proud and grateful to Eva and Rachel for helping me get to this point. My new haircut, along with surrendering my beard, contributed to some of the weight loss. Rachel had convinced me to try a clean's haven look once, jokingly saying she wanted to see my face. I laughed at that suggestion, hoping she wouldn't be put off by the man behind the mask. Thankfully, she wasn't. And here I was on cloud 9. Feeling like a weight had been lifted, I made my way to Rachel's house, feeling on top of the world. Walking through the door, I was met by a nervous and pale-looking Rachel. The look of worry gave me a sense of déjà vu. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked nervously, feeling the familiar dread. "We need to talk," she said suddenly, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Those familiar feelings and nausea attacked my senses. "Okay," I said as Rachel took my hand and sat me down. "Look, Rachel, if you're going to break up with me, just do it quickly so I can get out of here," I said abruptly, and she recoiled in shock. "No, honey," she replied, gripping my hand tighter and pulling me closer. "I don't know how to say this because I don't want you to get mad at me. My feelings of dread are not abetted. I am pregnant," she announced hesitantly. I was in shock. We remained silent for a few seconds as her beautiful face creased up. Trying to gauge my reaction, I rose to my feet and walked a few steps away, turning back to her, looking worried and on the verge of tears. I screamed at the top of my lungs while simultaneously jumping in the air with both fists raised. Her face lit up, joy springing back into her eyes. "You're not mad?" she asked, regaining her beautiful smile. "How could I be mad? I'm going to be a daddy," I announced before taking her into my arms and kissing her passionately on the lips. We embraced each other for the next 5 minutes. I was the happiest man on earth. Over the next few days, Rachel, Eva, and I started looking for a house. Despite Rachel having little in savings, I had nearly $220,000 in the bank, more than enough to buy a house outright. In less than a week, we found a beautiful 5-bed colonial in Silverwood. It needed some renovation work, which put off other buyers, but with my construction experience, I was excited about its potential. Our offer was accepted, and we didn't need to take out a mortgage. The day we moved in, I got down on one knee and proposed to Rachel. It was fast, but I loved her so much, and she was the one for me. She accepted. I'd love to say that from there, we lived happily ever after, but that would skip over the reason I am sitting here in this courthouse. Just to make it clear, I was not being charged with anything. Well, a couple of weeks after moving into our new home, I had a phone call from Chris. It was earth-shattering, to say the least. I had actually forgotten all about Chris asking Anna's colleague to look into my ex-wife's new husband. And to be honest, Chris did too. If this had been going on for months, I had no idea what it was going to cost me. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't even care to know what he had found out. Nonetheless, Chris was beside himself with glee and just had to tell me his findings. I remained silent as Chris began to speak. "The whole thing is a house of cards, Jake," he said, laughing. "Anna's guy dug around, and after you gave us the full name, it set the wheels in motion. It turns out the IRS and the feds got involved." "Hold on," I yelled, thinking I had missed a major chunk of the story. "What do you mean the feds are involved?" "Just listen, Jake. Just you listen to this," he said, trying to calm me down. "The landscaping company he owns has Laura listed as a director, and it is in serious debt, Jake. I mean serious debt. And that is just for starters. The house he owns now has Laura's name on the deeds, and it is worth over $1 million. But the mortgage payments are made through a company called Zenith Holdings. That company owns the house and the business. Laura and David are listed as joint co-owners, and it began trading only 6 months ago, probably just after their wedding. I was trying my best to keep up, and I knew Chris was doing his best to relay what Anna had obviously told him. Anna's guy alerted the IRS, who, by the way, will be picking up his tab. I was pleased to hear I wasn't going to be stuck with a huge bill. Anyway, the IRS investigated David Stone and found out he is on their wanted list. They had a picture of him or something. "So he is a fraudster," I said, stating the obvious. "Oh, you're right, Jake. But wait until you hear what happened next," he said, teasing me. "Well, this investigation alerted the attention of some big corporate type in Austin, Texas," I interjected. "Yep," Chris said excitedly. "Well, his name is Michael Harris, and he has a daughter called Olivia Reed. She is currently estranged from her husband, Scott Reed. They have 2 kids together and—" Okay, by now I was seriously confused. "Get on with it, Chris," I said, exasperated. "Stick with me, Jake," he said breathlessly. "It turns out Scott Reed is David Stone." "What?" I screamed down the phone, and Chris' ear must have been ringing. Not that he would have cared. He was too busy laughing his ass off. "Yeah, and they are still legally married. I think he is called a bigamist or something, but that is not the best of it," he said, leaving me hanging for more. This was beginning to sound like a Hollywood movie or something. Well, the FBI got involved, and it turns out the guy is a 2-time felon. He has spent time inside for drugs and burglary. I think Mr. Simmons managed to get him a reduced sentence for the second conviction. He is a powerful man, apparently. Anyways, the feds investigated him, and this Scott David guy made contact with another suspect they were looking into regarding drug trafficking crimes. My mind drifted back towards Laura and her friends and family. I could just picture their faces at this size. I started to smile. "There is more, Jake," Chris continued. "The FBI and the IRS joined forces and took this guy down. They found him at a storage unit not far from his home, and the answer to how a man in debt could afford $1 million house and a lavish lifestyle became all too clear." "How, Chris? How?" I was hooked. "They found heroin, ecstasy, and stolen goods in his unit and his truck. They actually think he was about to flee again. He had suitcases filled with clothes and stuff in his truck." I started to laugh, and Rachel joined me on the sofa, shaking her head and laughing too. She had no idea what she was laughing at or what was making me so happy. "So what about Laura?" I asked, and Rachel swung around and glared at me. I put my hand over the receiver and whispered to her. "You are not going to believe this," I said, shaking my head and leaving her hanging. Chris continued to speak as I returned the receiver to my ear. "She was arrested. Her parents have somehow managed to keep it out of the media, but I expect over the next few days they will be front-page news. It is a big news story after all," he said. I actually think Chris was more excited than I was because, quite honestly, any feelings I had for Laura, ill or otherwise, were gone. I reached for Rachel's hand and held it just to confirm that fact. After I ended the call, I turned to Rachel with eager anticipation and told her everything. She was shocked and surprised because even though she knew Laura was a complete bitch, it never dawned on her that she could be a criminal. All I could think of was what her parents, family, and the so-called social elites thought of her. Poor old daddy had a duped criminal for a daughter, and that cannot go down too well at the country club. I had to laugh to myself, and Rachel knew what I was thinking and laughed along with me. A few days later, the front page of every newspaper in the area and every media news channel was covering the story. I guess Laura's parents still had some leverage in the community because she barely got a mention. Of course, the bigamous drug trafficking con man was splashed all over our screens, but the female accomplice, who moved in elite social circles and was well known in the corporate financial world, was not named. However, less than a week passed before one newspaper published the mugshot picture of them both, complete with prisoner numbers but no mention of Laura by name. We did find out that Scott Reed was actually 44 and not 38, as he claimed to be. So my ex-wife actually left me for an older criminal who has just destroyed her life. Maybe she wasn't as intelligent as she thought. I was actually shocked at the image of my ex-wife. I had to take a few looks just to recognize her. She looked a shadow of the confident and arrogant woman who dumped me nearly 8 months ago. She was gaunt and looked as though she had aged. Her hair was thinner, and she had huge dark bags under her eyes. I looked up to see my beautiful, pregnant fiancée, who looked the complete opposite. I felt like the luckiest man alive, not only to have her, but to also be shot of my ex and her family. In the months that followed, the whole issue died down. We enjoyed our first family Christmas in the new house. Rachel's parents came to stay with us. Anna and Chris stopped by, and I was surprised to see a few of my old friends from my construction days get back in touch. They loved Rachel too, and it was they who talked me into getting back into the construction game. Rachel and Eva agreed with them, and that's another reason I love them. In the new year, I quit my job and became a self-employed tradesman. I was working on construction sites, but also doing small jobs in the community. Ironically, I also started to get a lot of requests to do landscaping work in quite a few neighborhoods. I was even surprised to be contacted by Ethan and Chloe, but only if I promised not to try anything on with Chloe. They had my word. In May, Rachel gave birth to our twins, Max and Sophie. In June, we were married in a small ceremony in Westfield. It had been just over a year since the divorce from Laura, and to think how much has happened in that time is astonishing. However, sadly, it would not be the last I would see of her. My new perfect life had been going so well until a visitor came knocking on my door, completely out of the blue. His name was Robert Lewis of the law firm Thompson Lewis, who was defending Miss Laura Baker in her upcoming court case. I was surprised she had gone back to her maiden name. Surely Mommy and Daddy wouldn't like the good Baker name dragged through the proverbial mud. Mr. Lane made himself comfortable in my house as he spoke. We would like you to provide a good character testimony for Laura. I mean Miss Baker? He asked forthrightly. I laughed. Why would I do that? I replied. Well, before your divorce, you knew Miss Baker better than anyone. You know she is straight and would never get involved in anything criminal, right? I don't know if he was asking or telling me, but even I could see where he was going with this. What if he refuses? A voice behind me suddenly asked. Rachel emerged from down the stairs, obviously listening in on our conversation. Mr. Lane looked at me. What did my wife say? I proffered. Well, we can get a subpoena and force you to attend. If you still fail to show up, we can have you charged and thrown in jail, he said with a now menacing tone. My first reaction was to smash him in the face and throw him headfirst through the door. But as I looked towards my wife, I realized I had too much to lose. I had no idea if what he said was right or even legal, but for one court appearance, I acquiesced to his demands. So here I am, sat in the waiting room of the courthouse. The trial has been going on for a couple of days, and as my appearance neared, I turned to Rachel. What do I say, honey? I asked with a whisper. She took my hand and looked at me with those beautiful brown eyes and said, You are the most honest and loving man I have ever known. Just be honest. I knew that what I said in that court would probably have no bearing on the case at all. I had been strong-armed into attending by my ex-wife's legal team. They had wrongly made the assumption that I would speak highly of her. It could be the biggest mistake they had ever made because I was going to do no such thing. A few days ago, the trial for Scott Reed had concluded. He was found guilty of Class C bigamy, a federal charge of Schedule I drug possession with intent to supply, perjury, handling stolen property, and a whole range of charges relating to defrauding the U.S. government. He was also on a third strike. He was sentenced to 70 years in prison. Even I was shocked by that sentence. However, in an attempt to get a lesser sentence, He implicated Laura on the fraud and handling stolen goods charges. He claimed she was in on it, as they started the holding company as soon as they were married. What is it they say about no honor among thieves? The stolen property charges were being contested, but on fraud, the IRS had her all ends up. "Mr. Davies, we are ready for you," the bailiff declared. I rose to my feet and exhaled loudly. Rachel had left to join the public gallery, while Eva looked after the twins in the waiting room. They were sound asleep, oblivious to it all. In the court, my name was announced, and as I approached the stand, I could feel the eyes of the entire court on me. It was a strange atmosphere. There were a few gasps as I took the stand, especially from those sat behind the defendant. As I took the oath, I turned to face the room, and it was the first time in over a year that I had seen Laura in the flesh. She was dressed in an orange prison uniform and surrounded on either side by an expensively put-together defense team. She was looking down at her feet, but I made eye contact with her parents and then a few of her friends who sat behind her. I made out a couple of people who looked at me and mouthed the word "wow." The irony of me now looking down on them from the witness stand was not lost on me. I spent our entire marriage with them all looking down on me. Now the roles have been reversed. Robert Lewis rose to his feet and began to speak. "Thank you for coming today, Mr. Davies," he said. "Well, I wasn't given much choice, was I, Mr. Lane?" I replied, staring down at him. He recoiled at my tone, and all eyes turned towards him to see what his reply would be. At that moment, Laura finally lifted her head and looked in my direction. Her eyes flew wide open and her jaw dropped. She suddenly burst into tears, causing everyone to turn and look. The realization must have hit her. The man she fell in love with had made a welcome return, and the man she had destroyed was gone. She was now inconsolable. As the judge asked her lawyer if he needed to take a minute, he ignored his offer and continued. "Mr. Davies, as the defendant's ex-husband, who was admittedly treated very well by my client in the divorce, would you agree that the charges against her surprise even you?" he asked. No objections from the prosecutor. I was very shocked, but being treated well in the divorce, "I guess you and I have different ideas on that," I replied confidently as murmurs appeared from behind him. I am sure I could see Laura's parents talking to one of the team as Laura continued sobbing. "Okay, Mr. Davies, but would you say that in all the time you and the defendant were together, she was always an honest, hardworking, and law-abiding citizen?" he asked. "Well, she was cheating on me for 4 months with a man she described as younger, more attractive, and successful. So once again, we probably have our own definitions of honesty," I replied. I was beginning to think at that point her legal team realized they may have made an error here. Remember, he only threatened me to turn up, not paint a picture of a perfect, innocent woman. I was just being honest, like Rachel said I should be. But would you agree that in that time you neglected yourself physically and intellectually? So when someone better came along, could you really blame the defendant for moving on? He said. Truly, there was an almost universal chorus of disapproving moans from the public gallery and the prosecution bench, who obviously felt that at this point they were not really needed. The defense was digging my ex-wife's grave. The judge brought about order, giving me a chance to think about my reply. I agree that I neglected aspects of my life. It was very hard to live with someone who controlled my life and whose family and friends considered you beneath them. The defendant's father once referred to me as a good-looking dummy, I said openly, and the look of shock and confusion amongst the defense was almost too hilarious for words. At this point, Laura was just staring at me with pity in her eyes. I had none for her in return. That may well be, Mr. Davies, but there is nothing to suggest that the defendant was ever involved in criminal activity. No evidence to suggest that for the years you were together she was dishonest or looking to commit fraud. She paid her bills, even yours, for a while and never broke the law. Is that right? He said, now visibly flustered. Objection. The prosecutor rose to her feet. This is inadmissible, Your Honor. The witness is not here to prove the defendant committed no crime. It is a waste of the court's time. Sustained, the judge said. The defense can rephrase the question. Mr. Lane looked perplexed but cleared his throat and resumed his line of questioning. Mr. Davies, in the years you were together, the defendant was an honest person who paid all her bills, her taxes, and her mortgage. She even paid yours for a time. Is that correct? He stated. Yes, I said. But I have no idea what type of person she has been over the last year. Well, I think we can take a guess, I said. Objection, Mr. Lane, he said, looking at the judge. What do you mean, objection, Mr. Lane? He's your character witness, the judge said, trying not to laugh. As half the courtroom burst into laughter, the jury had to look away. Your Honor, he is obviously a bitter ex-husband seeking revenge on the woman who dumped him and moved on, he said, now getting angry and irate. The defense team was now beside themselves with worry. Laura was looking back between her parents and her counsel with tears running down her face. The judge spoke again. If he is a bitter ex-husband, then why did you put him on the stand? The prosecution team just sat back and smiled to one another. Is it true that you are indeed a bitter man who just wants to see his ex-wife suffer? Mr. Lane asked after a period of silence. If this had happened 9 months ago, you may have had a point, but now I have nothing to be bitter about. I may not be an intelligent man, Your Honor, but I am an honest man. Please, Mr. Davies, your wife? Ex-wife, Mr. Lane, I interjected. Okay, your ex-wife leaves you for another man, and you feel no bitterness or ill will towards her and her family? He probed. No, like I said, 9 months ago, maybe you could have implied that. But since then, I have found the most beautiful woman in the world, I said, looking over into the public gallery and straight at Rachel. People followed my gaze until all eyes were on her. She picked me up, put me back together, and now I get to call her my wife. She has given me 3 beautiful children. We have great friends, a wonderful family, a beautiful home, and a successful business. Who in the world would be bitter with all that? I stated, never breaking eye contact with my beautiful wife, the smile never leaving my lips. She just looked back at me with that radiant smile, nodding her head. I turned back to see the defense looking tense. And now Laura's parents were looking down at their hands. Laura looked distraught and was sobbing as she caught my eye. I mouthed the words thank you to her, and she collapsed into her arms onto the table. I was dismissed, and I returned to my family. As I walked through the door, I could hear a big commotion with Laura at the center of it. She was screaming, sorry, I love you, but whether or not it was aimed at me, I do not know, and frankly, I did not care. Laura was found guilty of conspiracy to commit an offense to defraud the U.S. government. I guess the court felt Scott Reed was not smart enough to do it alone. I read it was titles 18 to 371, 26 to 72, 1 and 72, 6, 1 and 2. I had no idea what that meant. She was also found guilty of 5th-degree possession of stolen goods, which was a Class A misdemeanor. Apparently, she was sentenced to 6 years in prison. It also meant any chance of continuing her career in finance upon her eventual release was gone forever. First life is pretty great. The twins are getting bigger each day, and their smiles can lift the clouds on even the darkest day, which I am pleased to say are few and far between. My business is booming, and even Rachel now has a few clients that visit our home for hair and beauty treatments. Eva is breezing through her final year of college, which I am now paying for, by the way. Well, it is the least I could do for her. She did save my life. One day, as I was finishing up a job at a client's house, I got a call from Chris. Hey, Jake, can you talk? He asked, sounding a bit urgent. Sure. What's up? I replied, wiping the sweat off my forehead. Remember that investigator Anna knows? The one who looked into Laura's new husband? Well, he's found something else, Chris said, his voice dropping to a whisper. What now? I asked, a bit weary. I thought we were done with all that. I know, man, but you gotta hear this. Turns out, Scott had more skeletons in his closet than we knew. There's a whole mess of financial scams and frauds he was involved in, and Laura might have been deeper in it than we thought, Chris explained. I sighed, feeling the weight of the information. What does this mean for us? Probably nothing, man. But it's something you should know, especially with the kids and Rachel. Just keep your guard up, Chris advised. Got it. Thanks, Chris, I said before hanging up. I shook my head, thinking about the craziness that had been my life for the past couple of years. When I got home, Rachel was in the kitchen, prepping dinner. Hey, honey, you won't believe the latest from Chris, I said, giving her a quick kiss on the cheek. What now? She asked, raising an eyebrow. More dirt on Scott. Seems he and Laura were involved in even more scams than we knew. Chris Guy found some new evidence, I explained. Rachel frowned, her hands pausing over the salad she was making. Do you think it's going to affect us? Nah, I don't think so. But it's a reminder to stay vigilant, I replied, wrapping my arms around her waist. We're a team, and we can handle anything. Rachel smiled, leaning into me. We've been through worse, Jake. We'll get through this too. Later that night, after putting the twins to bed, Rachel and I sat on the porch, enjoying the cool evening air. I was thinking, she said, breaking the comfortable silence, maybe we should take a vacation. Just the two of us. Leave the kids with my parents for a week. A vacation? Huh? I said, smiling at the thought. Where would we go? I don't know. Maybe somewhere sunny and relaxing. Just to get away from all this, Rachel suggested, looking hopeful. That sounds like a great idea. We deserve a break, I agreed, squeezing her hand. Let's do it. As we planned our getaway, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the turn my life had taken. From the depths of despair, I had found love and happiness again. And though the past still cast its shadow, I knew that with Rachel by my side, I could face anything. The next few months flew by. The twins celebrated their first birthday, surrounded by friends and family. Eva graduated from college with honors, and we couldn't have been prouder. My business continued to thrive, and Rachel's little home salon was gaining popularity. Finally, the day of our vacation arrived. We left the kids with Rachel's parents and headed to a beach resort in Florida. It was everything we needed, a break from reality, a chance to reconnect and remember why we fell in love. As we walked along the beach one evening, hand in hand, Rachel turned to me and said, Jake, I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter what the future holds, I'm with you. Always. I stopped, pulling her into a tight embrace. I love you, Rachel. You saved me. You gave me a reason to live again. And you've made me the happiest woman in the world, she replied, tears glistening in her eyes. Under the setting sun, we kissed, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We were a team, bound by love and strengthened by the trials we had overcome. And as the waves gently lapped at our feet, I knew that I had finally found my forever home, right there in Rachel's arms. Thanks for watching. How would you handle discovering the truth about your ex? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories. See you next time.